समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या? समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme related documents carefully.
Prime Minister Modi has just concluded his second visit to Israel. The first was in 2017. Since 2017, both countries have changed. Their neighborhood has changed. Their current priorities are of the same nature, but the intensity is very different. Setting up the tone for Prime Minister Modi's visit, Prime Minister Netanyahu had made a very short speech in the Knesset, where he said that since the last visit and his visit to India, much water has flown in the Ganges and in the Jordan, River Jordan. Of course, then you also said much more water in the Ganges than in Jordan River. Jordan is a very narrow river. It's really a nala of fresh water, though. There was time when I used to joke when I saw it the first time that if I was a bit younger still and maybe I trained for 6 months, I might count on my odds on jumping across the river. That's a joke, however. I could not do it. All I'm trying to say to you is it's a very narrow river on which Israel depends. Now, he said that and Prime Minister Modi made his speech. 31-minute speech. It got a lot of applause. However, it had 3 highlights that I will mention to you. And after mentioning those, I will take you again on a tour of the Islamic world. Because once again, this is something that we had started talking about in the earlier episode, in the first episode on the Modi-Israel visit. This is in a way going forward from that. Because what we call as Islamic world, sometimes we can paint it out to be one unified entity. It's not like that, because ultimately this is something that I've been writing in National Interest, my column, several times I've written it, that ultimately what matters is not religion, what matters is nationalism, sovereignty. Every nation is a nation first. Just because 10 nations follow one religion, they don't follow one policy, and just because 10 nations or even 2 nations follow the same religion or also designed in this under the same religion or religious practices, it does not mean that they don't have contradictions, enmities, and this is geopolitics. Anybody can be anybody's yar. So remember that song from Upkar, I think it was a 1967 film, कसमें वादे प्यार वफा सब बातें हैं बातों का क्या, कोई किसी का नहीं ये झूठे नाते हैं नातों का क्या. That all the promises, all the oaths of loyalty, all the promises of love and affection, all of this is just talk. कोई किसी का नहीं, that means nobody is sold to anybody, nobody is committed to anybody. These are just relationships, and who knows anything about relationships? That's how nations work. That's how nation states work. And this applies also to the Islamic world, which is all of the 57 countries of OIC. Remember, these are not all Islamic countries, because many of these, say Indonesia, has a secular constitution, and there are many others. Central Asian republics, for example, they have Muslim majority population, but they are secular republics because they are still run by old socialist strongmen. They don't even acknowledge an official religion, nor does Indonesia. Malaysia might, but nor does Indonesia. These are Muslim majority countries with widely divergent interests, 51 of them. Every now and then they get India irritated by issuing a statement on Kashmir. Those are the things which are like platitudinous, where they might sign together and some might dissent, but generally they all have contradictory interests, and in some cases shared ones also. So within that group also there are multiple groups, and within that 2 other states play in the same extended region. 2 other states, one is a Jewish state, that is Israel. Second is India, a secular state, Hindu majority secular state. Then also say a tiny state like Armenia, which is almost 100% a Christian state. In fact, an Orthodox Christian state. This is where the superpowers also clash, and many proxy wars go on. Now, what did the Prime Minister say? Even in his speech, some of these contradictions, he was addressing these, and he was walking this tricky space very carefully because it takes some navigating to do it. He said, for example, that the Gaza Peace Initiative, he didn't say Donald Trump's, but this is really Trump's Gaza Peace Initiative. This is the Trump board for Gaza Peace. He said this is a good initiative towards, and I quote from him, just and durable peace for all the people living in the region, including addressing the issue of Palestine. I quote from him, the issue of Palestine. So you can see how much of a tightrope walk it was. Once again, I think seeking justification for his support for the Gaza Peace Initiative or the Trump board on Gaza, that's my usage. He said, the Prime Minister said that Gaza Peace Initiative, as endorsed by the United Nations Security Council, and this offers a pathway for which India offers firm support for the initiative, right? That is how he stated this. And look at the Gaza Board of Peace. Lots of countries are on it. We've seen them, first of all, lining up around Donald Trump at Sharm el-Sheikh, then at Davos, signing up the joint declaration, joining the Board of Peace, including by the Pakistanis. Now the Israelis have also joined it. So you see a contradiction, because life in geopolitics is about contradictions, about taking advantage of them or surviving despite them, or learning to deal with them diplomatically or frankly quite cynically. You don't have to be honest in diplomacy. So Pakistan, that does not recognize the state of Israel. Pakistani passport actually says you can go anywhere in the world but the state of Israel. You can come to India for sure, but you cannot go to Israel, because Israel is something that they would describe as a Zionist, as an illegal Zionist entity. They will not even call it a nation. But on the Gaza Board of Peace, the Pakistani Prime Minister will sit jointly with the Israeli representative, whether the Prime Minister sits there or somebody sits there on his behalf. I had written in a national interest several months back, and you will see just that part of the national interest, and I will share the full link with you. And I had said Pakistan will normalize its relationship with Israel much before it finds peace with India. And that has happened on this Gaza Board of Peace. They are sharing the same table on something that concerns people of Gaza, on which the entire Islamic world has been angry, and on which Pakistan has also been making very strong statements. Now, with that, first of all, Modi supports this initiative. Then the second point that Modi says, he gives Israel very strong support in its fight on terror. And he describes the October 7, 2023 attacks by Hamas as terrorist attacks. India does not officially recognize Hamas as a terrorist organization, but these attacks have been called terrorist attacks, and the two leaders have several times said that both have zero tolerance for terrorism under any name, and nothing, no cause, no excuse justifies terrorism. To that extent, this is a support for Netanyahu and Israel as well, part of the same tightrope walk. And then he supported the Abraham Accords. He said some years ago, when you signed the Abraham Accords, we applauded your courage and vision. It was a moment of new hope in a long troubled region. Since then, the situation has changed significantly, because one of the things that's happened is that the expectation was that more countries will join Abraham Accords. Israel, UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, and later Sudan as well. Then the expectation was that at some point, the big daddy in the region, that is Saudi Arabia, will join. And I think they were on the verge of it. In fact, if you read all the strategic literature in the world, it looked like they were on the verge. They were about to join it. That's when the October 7, 2023 attacks happened, and the clock was turned back on that process. Since then, we have seen even the Arab world divided between the two big daddies. Earlier, there was one big daddy, Saudi Arabia. Now there are two. So there is Saudi Arabia. These are the oil-rich Gulf states. Saudi Arabia and UAE. They seem to be following different paths. It's not as if they've broken apart, but they have different paths, and they have conflicting interests in Africa, Horn of Africa, and also deeper in Africa, for example, Sudan and Libya. That is how things have changed since the Abraham Accords. That's the reason Modi has gone on to say the path is even more challenging now, yet it is important to sustain the hope. Now, to understand the region, if you see the Gaza Board of Peace, if you just see the names on the Gaza Board of Peace, that gives you a good starting point for a textbook lecture or a tutorial on the Islamic world and the Middle East. There are 57 countries of OIC, of which 15 have joined the Gaza Board of Peace. All 15 are deeply critical of Israel over what's been happening in Gaza. All 15 have populations which are furious over what's happening in Gaza, and yet they've joined this Donald Trump led or sponsored group to reconstruct Gaza. And in fact, this will involve relocating a lot of the people of Gaza. Now, that is not something any of these countries would have endorsed by itself. But hathi ke paon mein sabka paon, as we say in Hindi, Donald Trump is there, or there is safety in numbers. So they've got there. Of the 15 Islamic countries, 15 members of the OIC, I will just count them for you: Azerbaijan, Jordan, Albania. Albania is a different kind of Muslim country, Muslim population, but very un-Islamic in its politics, very westernized and modern. Dua Lipa comes from there. Azerbaijan, Jordan, Albania, UAE, Indonesia, not Islamic but Muslim majority. Uzbekistan, Muslim majority, not Islamic. Pakistan is Pakistan after all. Bahrain, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kazakhstan, Kuwait, Morocco, Egypt. These 15 have joined. Bangladesh has said that they are happy to join. They would like to join. Of these 15, five do not recognize the state of Israel. What are these five? These five include the country with the largest Muslim population in the world, Indonesia, and the country with the second largest Muslim population in the world, that is Pakistan. Both do not recognize the state of Israel, nor do Saudi Arabia and Qatar and Kuwait. However, Saudi Arabia and Qatar are quite happy to talk with Israelis on the side. Qatar, in fact, is the home, Doha is the home for all negotiations between the Israelis, Hamas, sometimes the Iranians, and others as well. So once again, in that universe, nobody belongs to anybody. I told you, कोई किसी का नहीं, ये झूठे नाते हैं, नातों का क्या. All these relationships are basically, I'm very tempted to use that modern word now that young people use, situationships. So everybody is responding to their situation. Given the situation, you can choose your friends, your enemies, and then nothing else matters. Religion doesn't matter, ideology doesn't matter. The sect within the religion doesn't matter, and I will explain that to you as we go ahead. In the first episode on the Modi-Israel visit, I had described to you what Netanyahu called his hexagonal alliance between six powers, in which he also included India. Now, he also said that there is a radical group rising on the Sunni side and also one rising on the Shia side. And he wants this alliance to counter both. This alliance also has many Muslim countries. For example, this alliance will have UAE. He doesn't mention it, but obviously it will have UAE, it will have Bahrain, Morocco, it will have the Abraham Accord members, it will have India and some other countries in the region who he doesn't specify. He also says there will be countries in Africa as well. Now, see this more carefully. You might think that because Israel and now Trump have such a big problem with Iran, and he keeps on talking about Shia radicalism. So Israel must be at war with the Shias because Iran, after all, has so many of the world's Shias. So much so that Iraq, which also is Shia majority, is pretty much under Iran's influence now. However, think of the state of Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan is a country which is almost 97-98% Muslim. So a Muslim country, but a secular constitution, does not call itself an Islamic nation, does not have a state religion. It's also part of the member of the Pakistan, Turkey, Azerbaijan troika, very firmly so, and that is the reason Azerbaijan's relations with India are also a little bit strained. And since we are talking about Azerbaijan, it hit the headlines in India, in fact, hate lines in India during Op Sindoor and after. I will also tell you that not only is that country not run like an Islamic country, it is run like a classical Soviet-style dictatorship. because the same family has ruled the country since 1993. It was Heydar Aliyev, who was a strongman of the Soviet era, who threw out the recently elected government and took over, got himself elected. He ruled for a long time, and who's ruling Azerbaijan now? It is Ilhan Aliyev, his son. So this is a classical Soviet-style dictatorship. Religion has nothing to do with politics there, and as you can see, all its alliances with Pakistan and Turkey on one side and Israel on the other, and the war on Christian Armenia, all of this tells you that this is not a country, or this is not politics in this region, which is run on the basis of politics. Many countries, which is being run on the basis of religion. Many countries might use religion as and when it suits them, but they all do it cynically. Azerbaijan has had an old warfare going on with its neighbor Armenia. In fact, it fought a war there, occupied, or it will say recovered Nagorno-Karabakh, that we've talked about many times, and after defeating Armenia in a war. What weapons did Azerbaijan use in that war? Azerbaijan is a Muslim nation. Of Azerbaijan's Muslims, about 65% are Shia. You would have thought Israel has this big problem with Iran, and then Iran's proxies like Hezbollah and Houthis who are Shias. But the weapons Azerbaijan used against Armenia were predominantly Israeli. It used many of the same drones that it bought from Israel to knock out Armenia's radars, as India used to knock out Pakistan's radars in Op Sindoor. The rest of its weapons, where do they come besides whatever it might have left over from the Soviet era? The rest of its modern weapons are all bought from Turkey. So here is a Muslim country which is in an alliance with Turkey and Pakistan, both powerful Sunni countries, predominantly Sunni countries. This Muslim country has 65% Shia population. It's buying weapons both from the Sunni Turkey and Jewish Israel to launch war on Armenia, which is almost 100% Orthodox Christian country. And Armenia in turn is the biggest buyer of Indian weapons. If you see Indian armament exports, most of them today, the high value exports are going to Armenia, which needs to beef itself up for the next war against Azerbaijan. India is Israel's friend, not ally, but as close to being an ally as is possible. Israel is selling weapons to the enemy of the Christian nation to which India is selling weapons. The same country is also buying weapons from Turkey, whose influence Israel is trying to counter. That is the leadership, the Turkish leadership, that Israel worries about in terms of the Sunni crescent rising in the region. And then this Christian country buys weapons from India, and India and Israel are best friends forever. That is how complicated this region is. This is a very good case study of the complexities of this region, and how in this very complicated part of the world, nothing else works but self-interest. There is self-interest, there are legacy issues, there are complexities. This is where history, geography, geopolitics, religion, sects, everything combine. Everything combines to create this really complicated mishmash of contradictory interests. Even if you look at the Israeli-Palestinian situation, in fact, until about 50 years back, this was not a Muslim versus Jewish fight. If you go back to the 1967 war, the Six-Day War, even the 1973 war, the Yom Kippur War, the belligerents on the two sides, Israel was a Jewish state, but the belligerents on the other side, Egypt, Syria, Iraq then later joined in 73, all three were run by Ba'athist governments. Baathism was an Arab socialist nationalist movement, a pan-Arab or pan-nationalist socialist movement, and it produced great dictators like Nasser and Saddam Hussein and Hafiz al-Assad, and they ruled those countries for a very long time. It is after 1973 that slowly the Palestinian issue became an Islamic issue, a Muslim versus Jewish issue, because until then, a lot of the Palestinian spokesperson were Christian, because about 7% of Palestinians are Christians. So Hanan Ashrawi was globally among the most famous spokespersons for the Palestinian cause. I met her when I went to cover the first Gulf War. Very articulate. You saw her on every TV channel. In the 70s, until the 70s, the Palestinian movement, even the armed movement, was much more inspired by the Soviet power it was caught in the Cold War and by the socialist principles. It's later that it became a lot more Islamic. And now there is no doubt that this is a Muslim versus Jew situation. It is in that situation today that 15 members of the OIC have joined this Gaza board, and they are sitting there with Israel in spite of the fact that five of them, including biggest countries, I told you the largest Muslim population and the second largest, Indonesia and Pakistan. 5 of them don't even recognize the state of Israel. It is India that feels awkward so far about sitting there because the Pakistanis are there. In any case, it is too controversial a situation for India to walk into right now, and I think if the government is staying out, maybe that is wisdom, although I see a lot of commentary from well-known people and wise people saying that India should be sitting on that table as well. And once again, to sum up, if all of this leaves you even more cluttered than where we started, remember the same famous lines that I quoted earlier, written by Indivar for Manoj Kumar's film Upkar in 1967. कसमें वादे प्यार वफा सब बातें हैं बातों का क्या कोई किसी का नहीं है झूठे नाते हैं नातों का क्या. Because all these relationships, ties, commitments do not matter. These are not really relationships. And as I said earlier, borrowing a Gen Z expression, these are situationships, strategic situationships.